Okay.
All right. Fantastic. Okay, here we go. Hello, everybody. Today is Wednesday, June 26th, 2024. Welcome to the Beverly School Committee's Finance and Facilities meeting. We're meeting today in a remote hybrid setup using a remote meeting application, allowing for remote participation. And we have at least one remote participant in this meeting. BevCam is streaming. Thank you, BevCam. Channel 6 or high definition, channel 1073. Beginning on June 16th, 2021, with Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, which were twice extended and now further extended until March 31st of 2025. Local governments and boards were granted the provisions to, among other things, hold meetings remotely by suspending the need for a quorum and the chair to be physically present. It asks our body to use technical methods to allow for safe public access. As a side note, Beverly has prior approval for remote meeting participation of members through though through that permission, the chair and a quorum must be physically present when this act and its many extensions expire. Tonight is F&F, which means there's no portions for public input. Blah, blah, blah. We don't have a sign-up sheet because we don't have public input. Joining us tonight are members of the school committee, members of the public, who are, thank you, Ms. Coelho, who are volunteers on this committee, and various members of the district administration. I'll conduct a roll call in a minute to make sure that everybody can be heard. Please remember that any audio and video that you supply on this platform will become part of the meeting record, and as such, I encourage you to use your mute functionality to prevent background noises, and what's usually more important is that we remember to unmute when we want to actually talk, although Kim usually waves from the back room for us. Okay, so I'm going to conduct a roll call. Ms. Coelho.
Here.
Mr. Dr. Silva.
Here.
Thank you. It's a little rough here. Mr. Copeland.
Here.
Ms. Spanks.
Here.
Mr. Manzo. And from City Council this evening, we have the Honorable Chair, Ms. Flowers.
It's very formal, but thank you. I am here.
Excellent. From the school administration side, for her last meeting, I'm sad, Ms. Sherburne.
Here.
Dr. Sue Chirocek.
Here.
From Building and Grounds, Mr. Bob Shiroli.
Here.
Miss Erin Brown.
Here.
And the woman who has the unenviable task of trying to fill Jean's shoes, Miss Emma Puglisi.
Here.
How am I doing with that pronunciation? A few more meetings, I'll have it down pat.
You are also joined online by Principal Lisa Oliver from the middle school.
Yes, thank you very much, Miss Abel, who is our wonderful, thank you, Miss Oliver. We did hear you, and Miss Abel is running Zoom for me so I can try to run the meeting. And I'm going to get back into Zoom, and I'm going to share my screen. I'm a little rusty about the Zoom thing. Share. Okay, here we go. I am showing on my screen tonight's agenda. Our first item is approval of the meeting minutes. I will open those if I can be so skilled on my screen. All right. For members of this committee, you should have received all the files that I'm going to open on my screen in your packets. I will do my best to bring up a given file, at least for quick reference, and so people at home have a clue of what we're talking about. Anyway, so the meeting minutes from our last meeting, Wednesday, May 22nd, I'm looking for a motion to approve. So moved. Thank you, Ms. Coelho.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Or I could just call you Mr. Doctor all night long, and that might even be more entertaining. Any comments or corrections? I have to make Jean's last meeting a memorable one, Mr. Manzo. All right, so there's a motion on the table. Everybody who's voting is present tonight, so we don't need to do a roll call vote. All those in favor? 3, 4, 5, 6. Any opposed? That passes 6-0. Thank you in advance, Ms. Coelho, for taking the F&F meeting minutes. Our next item is approval of gifts to schools. So I'm putting this up on my screen right now. Oh, we have gifts to schools of May and June. I hear you, right? Oh, I hear you, Miss Sherburne. Hold on a second because I have to find May's to share on my screen. I worry that I didn't download it. Gifts to schools June. That means it's in my email. Miss Sherburne, while I'm looking for this file, do you want to maybe talk about what's in our gifts to schools for May?
So the gifts to schools for the month of May, the total is $9,402.10. There was a $4,000 donation from the PTO for Beverly Middle School speaker engagement that occurred on 5/31. Excuse me, the district-wide received $4,400 from the Hannah School Community Initiatives for a GTS Communities Initiatives. And $1,000 from the North Beverly Playground Communication Grant. They're putting in boards on the playground at North Beverly.
All right, really? All right, I thought I just opened it. All right, so all of you should have had that in your packet. I apologize for not bringing it up on my screen. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the gifts to schools for May in a total of $9,402.10.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Any comments or questions before we take the vote? I'm very fond of saying, who would say no to free money? And we are very grateful for all the community participants who raise money and donate money. That said, motion on the table. All those in favor of accepting this gift to school in May? Any opposed? That passes 6-0. Now on my screen is the gifts to schools for June. A very large amount because at our last big meeting, we were so lucky as to have BevCam, to have BevEd come join us, and we're always lucky to have BevCam, have BevEd come join us and give us, I can't even fit them all on one screen, these number of parent-teacher grants were awarded, and so in the month of June, we have a total of $37,325. I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. This is going to be our pattern all night long. I like it. Any comments or questions on these? I just want to make a comment that it is one of the best things, I think, the BevEd Foundation, and the fact that they honor our teachers, and by teachers, they mean all of the staff across the district. And when as a parent, I can make a donation and say, please honor this particular teacher, and then that money goes into the fund that funds these grants. And so it's this nice little cycle, and it's one of my favorite meetings, and it really makes a difference in our community when we have all this money to spend on, in essence, extracurricular types of things. So, motion on the table. All those who approve? Any opposed? That passes 6-0. Thank you, everybody. Jean, I see you flipping your pages over there. Our next thing is we have a series of budget transfers. I'm going to try to go quickly.
Can you do the grants first?
No, we can't do that because the next thing open on my file is, okay, yes, we can do that. Of course we can do that. How about
You
grant
did already have it
acceptance?
up
That
there
was
once.
a
There it
Microsoft
is.
Word doc, right? Here we go.
Yes.
Because it's not a PDF. It was in a different place. All right, let me make that a little bigger. All right. A grant in the order of the amount of $10,805.10. I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. Jean, would you like to speak to this grant?
Yes, so this grant is, comes from the First Jobs Youth Services of Mass Hire. The purpose of the grant is to provide entry-level opportunities for at-risk and low-income students in gateway cities. We did receive this grant last year for the first time. It was a late grant that we received. But they did reach out to us and that we were able to do this. Last year, I think we had about 12 students that were able to work in the community through this. So what they do is they get hired, we process the payrolls, and then Mass Hire gives us what the cost is for the students working. So it's, students working gets 100% paid by this, but we have to process the payrolls and do all the hiring here.
All right, I have a question, but before I call on myself, I'm looking around the table. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Sherburne? Yes, Mr. Copeland. Oh, yes, Mr. Manzo.
So these students aren't necessarily working in the schools, they're just in the community somewhere?
No, right, they're in the community. I do believe that last year we may have possibly hired one as a custodian, but working for the summer.
Correct.
Work. I'm not sure, are you getting any this year?
Yeah, we hired, I think, 12 custodians back this year.
Oh, so you
Two,
did.
two at each, the larger schools, high school, middle school, and then one at the elementaries.
Okay, yeah, so, so yes, and they work elsewhere in the community. And I'm trying to think of the name of the gentleman, it was a special ed teacher that actually brought this in. I can't think of
James
it.
Ritos? James Ritos?
No, I don't think so, but I think it's somebody that would have worked in Bethany's summer program last year. I can't think of it, but
I'm not sure.
he's the one that actually,
Michael McDermott?
yes, that's the name.
Michael
He's our
McDermott,
transition
fantastic.
specialist, yes.
Shout out to Michael McDermott
I
for
think we have
bringing us
2 or
this
3
grant
of
money.
his students going to the middle school. We're going to be coordinating after the 4th for them to start.
All right, so my question is, the wording of this, a gateway city, we're not a gateway city, so I wonder how it is, but maybe you cannot answer that question because you're not Michael McDonald.
Right, yeah, so I can't answer that question because I'm not Mass Hire, but Mass
I can.
Hire did allow us.
I think they give priority to gateway cities, but if there's application and funding available afterwards, they look outward to other places.
Cool.
Yeah.
Just making sure we didn't change our status.
I wish there'd be a lot more grants available to us if we did.
Kidding, right? All right, so there's a motion. Any other questions? There's a motion on the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes 6-0. Now the budget transfers, Ms. Sherburne?
Yes, please.
All right, so we're going to go in order. I believe we're going to try to go in order. I tried to open them in order. How about Jean? Can you see what's on my screen? I have so many, it's hard to read their numbers.
Yep, this one is,
550. Do you want 550 first?
Sure.
Okay, here's 550. Try and make it a little bigger. Here's what I'm just gonna ask for a motion, a second, and then if anybody has any questions on this particular transfer, especially because we have so many, we can raise your hand and I'll call on you for a question. All right, so for budget transfer number 550, looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Any questions for Jean on this particular budget transfer? Or Jean, do you want to say something?
Yes, so I can say, this one here is a salaries one. We were looking to put some money into the substitute lines, which is the last lines, 13 and 14. You see the substitutes going in. So that's the main purpose of it. What we did on June 10th, this was done. We went and looked through accounts that we had some monies in, and we actually had some accounts that actually needed to have more money put into them. Example is the $34,000 was for the North Beverly professionals. So this was moving monies within the salary lines to cover for the substitute shortage that we had at the time, funding.
All right, any questions? There's a motion on the table. Oh,
Yes.
Mr. Dominic, I'm sorry.
Quick question. So with the paraprofessionals, this is saying in some areas we had too much money set aside for them?
Yes, so what happens is sometimes we have, we put the funding in there, sometimes it's coming out of a grant. There's occasions that if the grant has some more funding, we move it over there, frees up some money in the appropriated. And then in some areas, we may have had an additional para in there that it was a late hire that I may not have put in at the beginning. So this is evening out our accounts. We do run a staffing pattern that tells us what we should have in each line, and that's what we judge this by. And some paraprofessional lines, or some salary lines, may have a little left over if people take days off without pay.
Yeah, that's where I was trying to get to, where that might be coming from, whether it was we couldn't fill that position, or was that, like you said, they're taking days off and.
Right, yeah, so there could be so many different variables that happen. I mean, our paraprofessionals, there is movement in there, so we have a lot of paraprofessionals that may have then filled in for a long-term sub, so then their position, we didn't have somebody in there, or we had a substitute in there, then the substitute cost gets doubly checked, and then we have freed up money.
It's perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? There's a motion on the table. Approval for budget transfer number 550. Any opposed? That passes 6-0. All right, our next budget transfer number is?
760, I think.
All right, let me see when I roll over this. Oh, bless you. 760, right?
Yes.
All right, 760 is on my screen right now.
This one here was, we needed some additional funding into the athletic transportation line, so therefore it's moving from NI 375, which is where the transportation for non-sped is, and we needed to move it in to cover transportation costs. So when we build the budget for transportation, we've been trying to, guesstimate what it is. We don't always know, because if they have playoffs and there's more trips, that's a good thing, but then it costs more money. So we're still trying to figure out the right amount for that. So this one, we had to move in $3,129. And this one was done on 6/12. So I think pretty much the season was over at that point, so I just needed to move that to zero out the account that's the HS 856 account.
Looking for a motion to approve this transfer?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. I have this incredible desire to call you Mr. Dominic. Any questions for Jean on this? All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes 6-0.
The next one I have is number 1096.
1096 is now on our screens.
Excuse me, this transfer was, we needed some funding to put into the North Beverly Electric account in the amount of $12,500. And we had a little surplus in the workers' comp, medical bills, self-insurance line. So therefore, we moved it from there to cover the electric bills.
Okay.
1096?
1096, yes.
I don't have that on here.
Maybe
You
it
won't,
came
you won't
today.
have that one on there, Ms.
added by
Coelho,
hand.
because I
There's two
added
of
it
them.
last minute. Donna didn't know. I was still doing them at 4 o'clock.
We have, actually, there's two that got added today.
Yes.
All right. Now I totally lost my place.
Looking for a motion.
Looking for a motion.
So moved. You said 1096?
1096. Thank you, Ms. Coelho, for that motion. Nice voice. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Any questions for Jean on this one? Yes, Mr. Dr. Silva.
I'm curious about the solar panels that went up at the high school and around the city, and how that influences costs of electricity at the school.
Yes, so
Discuss or mention that.
that was one thing that, excuse me, Miss Emma and I have been talking about the different things in the solar panels. So if you remember when we received the solar panels at the high school and the middle school, they were already aligning the solar panels on the other areas of the city that went to the school, so those are going to go to the school, go to other city accounts. And I did talk to Emma about going and meeting with Mike Collins and Bryant Ailes and David Gelano to talk about all of that, because we do see some accounts that, we need to have it shifted, because too many energy credits are coming on us. So that's one thing we're going to look at. At the time, they were anticipating the landfill solar was bringing in more energy, so we were getting that, so I kind of said, okay. So we'll just have to figure out what is actually, and I'm not even sure if the solar panels are working 100% yet. That usually falls on the city, Mike Collins and Arena. And I'm not sure if Bob knows.
I don't know, but we see guys working on them quite often, so could go either way. But I believe they are operational.
So it would be great to have an update on the function of those solar panels and how much savings it's providing for the city in the
Right, so
future.
it's not a direct, but we can put that, Dr. Trocheck, I'm looking at you maybe under OSC. If, I think that that's a good thing that we should talk about in the OSC meeting as well, and then we have all the people in that meeting, that maybe we can get a nice infographic even, what all fields do we have, or rooftops, what are they generating? And then it's not a one-to-one, for instance, it's not like everything that's pulled off of a given roof goes to directly offset that building's use, because none of the installations are, is it called behind the meter? They're all in front of the meter. And then what that means is that all the electricity that's generated gets sent to the grid, and then we quote unquote buy it back, but at a discount. So what we're going to be looking at is how much discounted did we get to buy out of the whole big pool across the whole city? And we don't say, oh, we only get to buy out of what comes off the hillside at Beverly High. And what Jean just said was we were actually buying off the pool off of the landfill because it was a bigger pool at the time. So there's a lot of, yes, are you raising your hand?
I was just saying that we had those discussions as we were approving the process from the very beginning as to where the energy flow was going to go and what credits would be going in what direction and how those credits would be distributed. But I think what Jean is saying is we probably would think it's a good time to have that discussion again and see, as they anticipated, how many energy credits were going to come off of the landfill versus how many are now coming off of any new installations. So, but right now, it's already a predetermined number of energy credits that come our way versus, versus not. And it's not specific to the panels that are at the building.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious just about the savings. Like,
Yeah.
what did we spend in the past? How much have we not spent since we've put those in?
So we were already enjoying savings prior to the installation off of different solar fields that were there. So I'm not sure there was a huge increase in the savings by installing them here. It just might shift where we get from where.
Yeah, but
Right,
even still, it's to some extent, you say, all right, well, now we have 2 parking canopies. It sure would be nice to see somebody somewhere is saving, and how much are we saving? How much are we as the schools contributing to the city saving? Because we were already pulling off of, for instance, the landfill or whatever. I heard you, as I like to say to my husband, I heard you twice the first time. And we will take that
I did
both-
not, however, so he had to repeat.
both into OSC, and then hopefully early next year in F and F.
you-
I'm not even looking at you. Emma, hopefully one meeting early next year, we can have a guest speaker and bring that information forward.
So,
All right.
Ms. Visnick, do you want to say what OSC is?
The
Because that-
Operational Sustainability Committee that Dr. Trocheck has formed that covers everything from curriculum to are we using the most fantastic light bulbs? Mr. Shirley comes to those meetings, so does Arena from the city, and we talk about all things green.
There you go. And we can run a report showing you what our costs are based from previous years, so that Emma can run you a historical report. We'll tell you what those costs are.
Okay, so budget transfer number 1096. Any further questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? 6-0.
The next one I have is number 1558.
It's on the screen. You want to,
1558, this transfer is, you will see, is pretty much all utilities. It's moving monies from one account to another. But it is all utilities, gas, electric, and telephone.
Look here, we didn't spend very much money. I circled it on the screen, Dr. Silva. We saved on electric at McEwen. All right, any questions for, motion. Who wants to make a
So
motion to
moved.
approve? Thank you, Ms. Coelho. A second. Yeah, but you're not unmuted. But thank you, Dr. Silva.
Second, thank you.
Any questions for Jean on this one? All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? 6-0. 1561? Was that not in order? Did I go out of order?
I'm sure, I don't have a copy of that one.
It's right here. Would you like to see it on the screen?
Yes, please. Transfer number 1561. This one is doing some transfers from different cost centers. So this one here is for various accounts within, so this one here, I'm looking at it, and I probably didn't really need to send it to you because it's going HA to HA, CO to CO, NB to NB, so I attached this one, but I did not need to. But you would be approving a transfer that was moving monies from different various accounts. Most of the money needed to go into the North Beverly interdisciplinary line.
All right, so for those playing along at home, within a cost center, so for instance, I'm gonna circle a few on my screen, CO to CO. We took a whopping $2.98 out of this consumables and put it into the library. And because it was within a cost center, that does not need to come to our committee for approval. However, it's in front of us, so here we go. Motion to approve. Thank you. A motion. You're already all voting. You're so good at this job. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. All those in favor? Any opposed? Passes 6-0. What's your next number that you would like, Ms. Sherman?
1558? Oh, wait a minute, we already did that one.
I don't have any more.
1570.
1570. It's on the screen.
This transfer is, let's see, this transfer here was done on 6/21, and this
Bless
one
you.
is moving funds, these are salary accounts, and moving the money into various accounts. The money was being, full disclosure on this one. This one here, we were moving money into the high school English and science teachers, and as you recall during your budget planning, you know that that's the money gets offset by school choice. So what this this transfer is doing is putting money into those two accounts so that I can move monies from school choice into the appropriation so that we can carry over a little more school choice money for next year, because we knew when we planned the budget that we were going to be very tight, and so this will ease up that tightness for Dr. Shirochek and Emma next year.
And again, I'm going to add that at the end of a year, all of our accounts need to be zeroed out unless they are quote-unquote revolving accounts, and school choice is one of our many revolving accounts. So I'm looking for a motion to approve budget transfer 1570.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Second.
Second?
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Any questions for Jean on this one? All those in favor? Any opposed? 6-0. Next number, my queen over there.
Number 1595.
It's on the screen.
1595 is, this one here, we had needed to move some money into the McEwen paraprofessional line. And again, this is for another transfer that we're going to be doing of expense into the IDEA Grant 240. So therefore, we needed to spend some of the grant funding, so I needed to put the money into the McEwen paraprofessional line so that we can move the expenses out of the grant, into the appropriated. So this is just another step for another transfer.
I'm looking for a motion to approve transfer number 1595.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Copeland. Any questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? 6-0.
Next one I have is number 1759.
It's on the screen.
And this one here is we're transferring monies into the private day. So this is on the same idea as the school choice, except that we're going to be pushing money out of the circuit breaker revolving account. So you would like to be able to carry over 100% of your circuit breaker into the next year.
talk about that
And
often.
when we built the budget, we were thinking that we were going to have to use anywheres between 10 and 20% of it. And when we had some savings within the budget that we could foresee at this point without having the final payrolls and the final warrants going through, we did feel that we were going to be able to afford to move $80,000. So we had to move $79,000 into the private day, and then we'll be moving an expense. So expense transfers don't come to you, budget transfers do. So what we'll do is we'll move that in. And as of this moment, we are, I would say, 80% confident that we're going to be able to carry over 100% of the circuit breaker, which is really important, especially when we were building the budget for next year, that we're really going to be tight on that and using about 40%. So maybe we'll only be at, we're hoping the circuit breaker is going to come in higher also based on our expenses. So this is to alleviate a little of the pressure and if we don't do these steps that we're doing, then the money would, go back to the city, and then it would go to free cash. And then if we needed the funds, then we'd have to go to city council and ask for it. So this is, the only way we can save it. And the city is aware that we do this. It's not like we're doing something sneakily.
It's
They
very
know that we
standard that we
have.
try to carry over our circuit breaker. The issue is how much, what percentage.
Exactly.
And all year long, you've told us we're not going to be able to carry 100%. Is a great thing if we can carry
Yeah,
100.
I'm pretty confident at this moment, and,
Knock wood.
yeah.
All right, I'm looking for a motion to approve transfer number 1759.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Yes, you have a question.
So, Gene, does this mean that you're prepaying some tuitions with this money, or is it just sitting in an account?
No, so right now, we've paid the tuitions out of the circuit breaker revolving account. And so by freeing up this money in the appropriation, we'll move those costs that we've already paid and push them into the appropriation. So it's actually things that we had already earmarked someplace else because we didn't think we had the money, and then we had some savings throughout. So there's savings that, that happens that we just don't know, like, people take days off without pay. In the special ed area, we had a lot of vacancies that happened during the school year that did get filled immediately. So we had some surplus. So one thing you always want to make sure is that if you have a special ed cost, that you offset it with another special ed cost, because then you maintain the same level. So each year you have to say to the DESE, will ask you, are you still funding special ed at the same level that you did last year? So if I said, okay, I didn't want to do this, then my special ed costs would have dipped, and then you would have gotten dinged with you did not spend the same amount on special ed. What the heck are you doing? So these are areas that what we can do and what you should do so that you're maintaining the same level. So what this is we already paid another tuition, and now I'm just going to move that expense off a circuit breaker, which we'll have a savings in there. On circuit breaker, we can only carry over what we receive in this year.
Okay. So then this $79,000. Is it sitting somewhere, or is it? has it
Yes,
been
it's
spent?
sitting in the private day right now.
And we can carry that over till next?
No, I'm going to move the expense
You're
in.
going to move the expense in?
Then it's going to go away.
it's gonna go
So
away.
today, it's sitting there.
Okay, and then,
Tomorrow, it's not.
And we don't,
today,
and
gone tomorrow.
the expense transfers don't come to us. So
Correct.
we won't see that.
Right, yep. So what it is this is pushing money in. So we had some savings, in other areas. And so we had a little savings in the high school sped teacher here, you can see. And then here's one, the middle school, because they had some savings. Let's make sure we spend it on special ed. I could have said, okay, no, we're going to pay for the Ayers kindergarten, Ayers playground, but then it'll throw off your numbers.
All right, any other questions? There's a motion on the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes 6-0.
And the last one I have is number 1878.
No, I don't have that one.
That one was in the last group that it just sent. And this one here is on electric.
I'll download it again. I'll download it. Well, you want to speak to it?
Sure. So this one here is, we were forecasting our last electric and telephone bills that we'll be getting. So the city today had a deadline that if you were going to do any encumbrances for FY '24, you had to do them today. We do not know if the bills are going to come in on June 30th or on July 1st, but generally speaking, they come in on the 30th of the month. So we went in and encumbered what we can estimate. And by looking at that, we had some accounts that were in the deficit or would be in the deficit. Therefore, that's why we're moving funds in. We did find that the Hannah facilities had a credit balance, had extra money, so that one, we took it out of that one. And then when I got done with that, I needed to look at other accounts because I didn't have enough to cover all the utilities. And the Hannah one had some savings because we're talking about those energy credits. I think too much is pushed towards the Hannah, so it looked like, when you look at your year-to-date report, it looks like they didn't spend any money on electricity, and it's because the credits are coming in. So I was talking to Emma about that earlier, and I said, let's make sure the meter is working correctly, because if you remember a few years ago, we had a meter that wasn't running, we weren't getting electric bills, but we are getting electric bills, but the credits are too great that there's, it looks like we only paid $2,000, so when you ask for that report, it's not going to be 100% accurate because of the credits, so somebody's going to have to really look at that. So my conversation with Emma today was, I think it's time to have a meeting with the city to make sure that they're not pushing too many credits, so it does look that you do have the right, when you look at a historical report, how much, because I'm not going to say that Hannah only spent $1,944 and another school spent $40,000.
And to speak on that, Hannah and Ayers, National Grid is replacing the meters at those schools, one last week and I believe one tomorrow.
You could look at usage instead of money.
Yes, yeah. And Mike Collins' department, primarily Tracy, can run reports for us, and probably Bob, I think, can run some of them for our schools, but he doesn't get all of them for the host city. She does. So that's what this transfer mainly was doing, is getting enough money into those accounts to cover it. And then I needed some additional funds where I took from the Buildings and Grounds telephone account and the OT copiers, lease copiers. We had some savings on our copiers when we renewed a lease this year, so we were able to use those funds. And this, again, is to zero out accounts.
I have a question.
I have a motion on this yet? Motion to approve? It's now on my screen, by the way.
So
Can I have thank you, Ms. Coelho. Second? Yes, Mr. Manzo. Thank you, Mr. Manzo. Any other questions? I see your hand going up over there.
Yeah, I do have a question. So, having heard what you said, what I'm interested in is knowing, over time, has the budget for electricity been affected? Like, when year to year, has the budget gone down for electricity,
Right.
knowing that certain amount of credits are coming in, or has the budget stayed level? And are we moving money from that into other things?
Right, yeah, so the money in the utilities has pretty much stayed stable. And the one thing that, we haven't put extra money in there, so when there is savings at the end, that's one of the things that has been historically, that we've had funds to do something else with. But what happens is every 3 years, I think it is, It might be 4 because city council votes on when you purchase from another company, they go out to bid for it. I don't think it's really bid, but collaboration to find out. And so that's one thing we don't always know. And then, but we have not increased our budget for utilities. I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we went up a little bit, but we level funded it for next year. As I was running the reports today, again, why I talked to Emma about the energy credits, I found that our cost was a little bit higher this year, and Bryant actually called me about 2 weeks ago and said, if you need some help with your funding, please come to me, because other city departments are finding that they have an issue with what they have to pay out. However, if I'm able to push money into my school's choice and push money into my circuit breaker, I'm certainly not going and saying, oh yeah, where's my share? But I do feel that it was about, if all the bills come in like we anticipated, that our cost went up approximately $26,000. And our utility cost is about $1 million, maybe $1,030,000, I think.
Okay.
So that's one, and he did say, if you need help, let me know, but
Okay.
I'm greedy, but not that greedy.
All right, any other questions? There's a motion on the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes 6-0. Are we done with budget transfers yet?
We are done with budget transfers.
Excellent. Okay, so the next thing on our agenda is the Building and Grounds report, and we actually have our Director of School Building and Grounds, Mr. Bob Shirley, sitting in the back table on the microphone. We've already heard from him a couple of times tonight. So, in general, we invite him here at the end of the year, and we ask him to talk about, what are you going to be doing all summer? Or, what are our schools wicked in need of before the schools open back up? And therefore, what are you going to be doing all summer? And then it is an opportunity for us to ask him some questions. And I will, I know there's a topic that we want to discuss on this, Ms. Flowers has already mentioned. And then I'm just looking at the time, and I know there's at least one other thing we need to vote on this evening. So I'm going to ask us to try to be concise in our discussion with Mr. Bob Shirley.
All right. Thank you, Lorinda. I could go quickly over some of the projects we're going to be conducting this summer. As always, the custodians have already started with their deep summer cleaning, and we will be conducting our fire alarm, fire extinguisher, water treatment, grease trap cleaning, kitchen hood inspection and cleaning, rooftop filter changes. We conduct a HVAC mechanical review. We have a third-party company, House, goes through every piece of mechanical equipment that we have to ensure it's working properly. If they find any issues, we tackle those and try to fix them before the start of school. As with anything mechanical, you're always subject for things to break and go bad, whether it's a brand new part or something that's been here for 20 years. So we try to do the best we can with preventative maintenance and stuff, but sometimes stuff is out of our hands. We're also going to do an exterior door sweep. We did this last year as well, and this will try to help us keep those pesky rodents out of the buildings. One thing that came up that was not on this report at the end of last week, as we were doing our semi-annual HVAC inspections and preventative maintenance at the middle school and high school, we have a controller on the chiller to the library and the auditorium that went down, and it's no longer operational, so we are trying to source a new one. That OEM part is $20,000. We're trying to source one that's non-proprietary but compatible for around 10 grand. So we're still investigating to see if that'll work. So we're hoping in the next couple weeks that that we could get that up and run with the $10,000 part. Some other big projects we're doing, we have refractories on 2 boilers at McEwen and boiler number 2 at the high school. And if you guys don't know what a refractory is, it's just it's a resistant material that keeps the high temps inside the boiler, right? So it's typically on the doors of the boiler. So they start to crack over times and corrode. So we have to replace those. We did boiler 1 and 3 at the high school in the fall. We got an exemption from the state. We didn't have to go out to bid because it was a project that had to get done, so we didn't have the time. We already refinished the basketball court at the high school earlier this week, so that should be good for the season. We have a new stove installation in the culinary classrooms through the Perkins grant. We don't have a plumber right now with the city, so we're going to have to outsource and find a plumber to install those for us. Here at the middle school, we will hopefully wrap up our flood damage from last year. So the mill work has already started. We have a plumber, an exterior plumber in house through our insurance that's doing the sinks and the plumbing to those. At Ayers, we have a new playground that's being installed. The old one is going to be taken out, removed, and a new one installed. There's also going to be a patio, I believe, made of bricks in memory of Bob King, the former custodian. At Cove, we have a current project out to bid to replace the freezer and fridge. It's one entire box, so we're going to replace the whole thing. It's currently leaking and has passed its useful life. That will also include any mechanicals that go with that, so it'll be a brand new unit. At Hannah, we are painting the upper walls and the classrooms. We conducted a indoor air quality and surface sampling there. Everything came back within normal and acceptable levels, but there's a lot of water damage. I don't even know if I would say water damage, but paint that is leaking and showing signs of water and from past decades probably. So we're going to refresh and paint that, and that's about our summer. We'll probably have stuff pop up here and there that people request and unforeseen things as usual. But any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, I'm looking around the room. I know that Miss Flowers, do you want me to start? Would you like to start?
I'm happy to start, but I guess if there's questions about what was just shared, I feel like this is a little tangential to the projects already on the book, so I will defer to any other questions first.
All right, I'm looking around the room. Do any F&F members have any questions for Mr. Shirley, either about this week's report, this month's report, or about what he's going to be busy with all summer long? I see none, Miss Flowers.
Thank you. So it was just fortuitous, I suppose, that we all three, Ms. Visnick and you and I, were all going to be here tonight because earlier this afternoon, Ms. Visnick and I sort of found our way into trying to help troubleshoot. And I know you were very helpful also, and then jumping in and helping to troubleshoot a question about when youth sports, and specifically in this case it was Beverly Girls softball, but when youth sports teams are using different fields in our city, and then when things are not as they might need to be for the youth athletes, who should they call? And I think what we encountered, and I don't want to speak for you, is that one of the things that is confusing for youth sports organizations, and I also don't want to speak for them, is when it's a school field versus a city field, and then it's a youth organization. And so who is approving the field use when, and then how are all of our different entities talking to each other? And who should they contact if they discover, in this case, there was trash that was not city trash. It was someone's household trash that had been left in a dugout, but there was a game there this evening, and it was significant amount of trash and a missing outfield fence. And so I think, if it's fair to say, that one of the questions that seemed appropriate to raise for this body and in this context is just how we could create a better process that helps support the work that you're doing and the work that city side departments are doing, and how everyone's interacting when youth sports teams are using fields that are sometimes city fields, sometimes school fields, and what process we could create to alleviate some of the pressures on that. Is that fair to?
I think that's very fair, and I think that there are some gaps, right? There are some holes in the sense that if school were in session, I think it's cleaner. We know that our varsity sports get first dibs, and then however our athletic director manages that with Bruce Doig in the rec department, after the varsity sports have their first dibs, then the youth sports get access. And when school's in session, we certainly know that our maintenance team is out there mowing. They leave their jobs inside the building and they go take care of the fields outside. And then when summer comes, things change. So I think there's a little bit of a hole there, as well as we could tighten up what are our chains of communication and make sure that that's well documented. So, for instance, if you have a daughter who's playing softball on that field and you have a problem, you should go to her coach, who should go to the director of that youth program, who should go to Bruce Doig. And then the rec department can, the quote-unquote city side can come over to the school side and they can figure things out. From a communication point of view, we often go up to go back down. That's how people expect the communications to work. So I appreciate the fact that I kind of threw up a fire signal today, and I appreciate the fact that you went and out of the goodness of your heart said, well, I'll just take the garbage myself. Mr. Schroely pointed out our parks, our fields are no different than all the parks in the city. They're carry in, carry out. Well, maybe we need better signage. I think that our fields say no dogs allowed. We have a policy, no dogs on school grounds. But in fact, dogs do come onto the fields, and unfortunately, we have quote unquote bad dog owners who don't clean up after their dogs. And so that is a detriment. But maybe we put up better signage. The fact that we had someone dump their garbage in that back field, much like there used to be dumping at the textile boxes at Briscoe, the old Briscoe, maybe we need to put up some surveillance back there. So there's a lot of things that aren't going to get solved in this meeting tonight, but Bob and I have already talked about trying to work on a process document and some best practices, and we'll continue to work on that. And in the meantime, I think that we kind of need to help encourage people who encounter problems to work the system, know who to call to get things resolved. And each of their youth sports has a director who then gets their time and their field assignments from Bruce Doig. And so that should be their first line of complaint, not your personal line, Ms. Flowers. Although I appreciate the fact that you resolved that issue yourself today. Did you have a question, Dr. Silva?
I think I have a recommendation for smoothing out the communications, because given the situation with the city and the school fields and residents not necessarily knowing what the rules are, it seems to me that it may be worth considering some type of electronic communication, whether an email is created that is copied to both Bruce and the athletic director, and they know who's on deck. They can triage and deal with it accordingly. That saves the resident from having to find out who they should contact to deal with it. I think we should try to use technology or email or a better process to make it easier for residents to negotiate this. Having coached youth sports, it was challenging. And I think having one email that gets sent to the two people in charge, and they can basically deal with who is responsible for it, depending on what time of the year it is a better solution. Something to consider.
Oh, absolutely. I don't doubt, and because I too used to be the director of a youth sports program, and I, as the director, knew who I got my gym time from. And so if there was a problem, my coaches knew to come to me, and I knew who to go to. And so, again, communication is key. And so we have a process. We have some gaps in that process, especially as we switch over to summer, because Bob's guys finish working at 3 p.m. in the summer. So there's no one in this building to go out and do something on that turf field. Yet it's a school field and it's expected that this maintenance team manages this school's field. So there's some problems there, and we have to work out a process, and then absolutely we will communicate that process.
As you know, with youth sports, it's a revolving door of volunteers. And as opposed to, coaches that are year to year coaching the same thing and knowing the process. And so I think coming up with a way to facilitate that and just make it easier
Sure.
would be good.
Yes, Ms. Flowers.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I agree with what Dr. Silva is suggesting, and also your point about the process. I think one of the things that I discern that seems confusing for residents to figure out, and probably for folks involved in youth sports, is what you were talking about, where it's hard sometimes to know, is this a school field, is this a city field? During the school year, it is a school field, and who's responsible? And so I think having a clearer process, and perhaps in addition to the kind of communication that Dr. Silva is envisioning, I feel like I've been in some communities with my youth athlete and noticed that sometimes their fields are signed with, if there's a problem, this is who to contact. Because sometimes you may also have folks who are not from your community. I'm thinking about someone from another community comes with their child, and could be an emergent problem that's not a problem that's emergent for the police, but would be emergent in terms of facilities. And so it could be that when we get this worked out, there could be a clear way to communicate that's posted.
Okay. Any other comments or questions relative to B&G before we move on to at least one item that needs to be voted on?
I think we have 3, but yes.
3. Oh, okay. Where do you want to go first, my friend?
Can I go quickly to the middle school student activity accounts? It's the, on my admin update. So
It's
the
also
first,
a Microsoft Word document, right? Yeah, here it is. It is on the screen.
yes, so this one here is the accepting the student activity banks accounts. So during a recent student activity audit, it was noted the school committee needs to annually approve the use of the student activity checking accounts at the middle school and the high school. And also it needs to vote annually to maintain the checking account maximum balance for our policy JJF. So I'm looking for a vote tonight to approve both the use of the checking accounts and the maximum balances in these checking accounts, which is $25,000 at the middle school and $50,000 at the high school.
I'm looking for a motion to approve this.
So moved.
Mr. Manzo, I'll take yours as a second. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Any questions or comments on this one?
Just so I have it clear, so these are accounts, say for, if you have a school committee or group and they do fundraising, the money would go into this
Yes,
account?
yep, so these are student activity accounts, so anything that goes funneled through this has to be a student activity. So yes, the fundraising is mostly for fundraising, and when you get to the high school, it's the class dues and everything like that, but yes. And they maintained outside of our appropriation budget that the school committee gets the warrants. These are not on there unless we do a direct payment that you picked up on this week.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes 6-0.
The second thing I have is the middle school, it's like an Excel spreadsheet that looks like this, Lavender. This is the middle school student activity accounts, and the current principal of the middle school would like to rename the group. So a previous principal would like to have it separated by the teams. And Ms. Oliver is online if we have any questions. However, what she's doing is she's just taking all the grade 8 ones and making it just one grade 8, one grade 7, one grade 6, and 5, and they're deleting the 2 that have been dormant for many years. And this, anytime that they have a new activity, it needs to come forward here for approval, so I felt it was important to bring a name change to you.
All right, before any questions, we need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. I have a question, but I'm looking around the room before I call on myself. Anybody else have a question on these account name changes?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So for, say, grade 6 Bobcats or Cougars, are they just raising funds as grade 6, or are they raising funds as each individual one?
Ms. Oliver, do you want to pipe in on that? But my understanding, it is all grade 6, and they try to keep it separate, but then when they did the fund, when they spent it out, they were all going to the same place, so then we had to take the money from all different accounts. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, this is just to simplify the process. It's also to encourage the teams to have more equitable experiences for students. So this is one way of doing that. And instead of us putting it in different accounts and then pulling from the different accounts, it allows the teachers to work together and plan the same events so that, if, for example, if you're in grade 7 and you're on Belch, you have the same experience as a student on Cabot or Han.
So with that, if you were, say, grade 7 Balch and you wanted to do an individual group trip, that would be more discouraged, and you'd want to do something more with, Cabot and Hill as well. Is that correct?
It is correct. Certainly, we wouldn't say no, but we are looking for a more, like I said, equitable experience so that if you're a 7th grade student, it doesn't matter what team you're on, but they all have the same experience. And that's been problematic in the past.
You all set, Mr. Copeland?
Yes, thank you.
You saved me because that was basically my question as well, so I thank you. All right, any other questions for Ms. Oliver on these consolidation of the activity accounts? All right, there's a motion on the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes 6-0. Ms. Sherburne, where are we going next?
Okay, then back to the first page on our admin update, looking for substitute teacher rate of pay. And the administration would like to request increase in the daily substitute teacher rate to $135 per day in FY25. It is currently at $110. And Dr. Schrochek has some information table here if for comparison.
Meaning the chart that I am showing on the screen, not that she brought a piece of paper that she has on her table.
That's right.
We provided a table.
I'm a little literal today.
Okay.
All right, so I want to kind of pile on this to say that this is probably the third time this body has considered a substitute teacher pay rate increase. Many years ago, we went from 80 up to 110, and now this proposal is on the table to, I think, other than Lynn, will make us be the choice of a given person who wants to be a substitute. I personally have heard from people who will not substitute in Beverly. They will choose to go to Lynn, despite the traffic, despite the drive, because Lynn's paying significantly higher. I don't think that we can go that high realistically in our budget, but I do appreciate this particular number. Again, looking at what our neighbors are paying, and it may well be, the mayor has mentioned in the past, well, then our neighbors might just raise their rate as well, which would be a good thing for people who want to be substitute teachers across the board. But for now, I think that we owe it to our students to do what's best for students, is to fill the rooms when we need a sub. And to do that, we need to pay competitively. And so I brought this motion forward during the budget, and it was recommended that we bring it to FNF and we talk about it at FNF. So here it is at FNF. And I, as the chair, am looking for a motion that we approve this pay rate increase for the substitute teachers.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Manzo. I'm looking for hands of questions, comments.
I have a question.
Please, unmute though, please.
So this rate that you are approving is higher than all the other towns other than Lynn, and you just mentioned to be competitive. to be competitive, to generate more interest in subbing here in Beverly. I'm just curious, is that the right course to go 135 compared to all the other towns other than Lynn? Just a question, is that the appropriate? Thank you.
Do we want to, does someone wish to comment how this number was chosen?
It's Jean's last night. I'd hate to take the thunder from it. Well, I will say we engaged in, we've been doing this for a while, and each time that we've raised the rates, we have taken a look at our fill rate, how often are we able to fill the substitute positions, and in general, there's a lack of substitute teachers available. We looked at, all of the different numbers. The last time when we raised it, then as predicted, others were raised around us, right? And so I think that at this point in time, if we end the year at 135 and we are able to advertise all summer with our rates at 135, we'll start off with a stronger pool of substitute teachers at the beginning of the year. And I often think that if you can get folks in the door and be part of the pool of subs that you get to draw from, then you have better luck throughout the year. If you change that rate later, or if you change it in anticipation, if we only went to say 125 and then everybody went to 130, then we'd have to, if you start, I think this is a good, strong number, and I think we need a good, strong pool. We know that we've had to, when we don't have subs, we have to utilize paraprofessionals, and that takes them away from the service delivery that they're already providing. And in addition, we pay them an incremental increase in order to do that as well. So I think it's a good number. I think I think we're trying to really go strong and start the year off with a pool of substitutes that will help us throughout the year. So I think we were comfortable with this number. We toyed around with, how high should we go? But we really need the subs. And we do know that when we raise the rates, the fill rate goes up. And that's
I was
really
just gonna
important.
Say, can you speak to that? The last time we went from 80 up to 110,
Yeah, we had a
our
strong-
fill rate definitely
It's a surge in
went
the
up.
fill rate, and then as 110 became lower than the other communities around us, our fill rate went down. So I think it's going to be a competitive, sort of situation as we go forward. I feel like, though, I think 135 is a nice, strong number and will bring us folks that are looking. There are people that like subbing. That's what they want to do, and you want to bring them in, and those are the folks you want subbing because they're reliable and dependable, and they come and they want to work every day, and they're not they'll kind of say, whatever building you need me in, and we often get, well, I'll only work in this building, and that's wonderful that we have them, but it's nice also to get a pool of subs that are really in it for the opportunity to be a substitute teacher. So I think it's a good number.
Do we have did that answer your question? Do we have any other questions, comments, thoughts? Are we ready to vote? Yes, Mr. Manzo?
So the budget you just approved, or was just approved, doesn't include this increase, obviously. And so, what are you going to do?
Sell
not
candy
you.
bars.
What's the district
Jean is going to be in Florida, and so she's going to go, what are you going to know? I'm teasing you.
No, I did talk to Dr. Sharuchek about that. So whatever the number is, so I'm kind of hoping that when having it at 135, you might not be hiring as many long-term subs, and that you're going to be at the bachelor step 1. So that's one thing that can be an offset. The other thing is, as you just saw, that I moved some money so that I could push some things into the to school choice. That was a method that, okay, if you need it, it will be there versus, so it is one of those things we're going to be taking a chance on. And so I do believe that it's something that we can afford. If not, there's some safety nets to catch us.
I knew you were going to ask that question. I appreciate it. Yes, Dr. Silva?
I will also echo the comment about competitive. Competitive to me is that you're within your community and not not ahead of it. Although I understand the point. So I do think that to be competitive, you could you could make it 125 and it would be competitive. And it would be better than the neighboring, the examples that you have here. I mean, I do understand the desire to increase that pool, but I would also be cautious as to how quickly you move to, exceed what the upper limit is for that for that position. So I'll just comment there.
Okay, I'm looking around the room. Any other comments? Yes, Mr. Copeland, sorry.
I don't know what the exact potential cost savings would be on your end. I just know in some other school districts, for example, like you said, you pull in a paraprofessional. Some other school districts might pull in a teacher, and then when they pull in the teacher, they're paying that teacher, for an example, let's say 80 an hour. So over 2 hours, say if you have a 2-hour class, it's $160. You're paying that one teacher to cover that class when you compare a substitute $135 for the entire day. So when you look at those numbers, it makes a big difference. So the less substitutes that you have, the more you have to pull into that financial structure, the more it's going to cost you, when $135 a day is actually a great bargain in comparison. Like I said, I don't know what your exact numbers are, and these aren't, what I just gave aren't exact numbers either for anyone else. But just in comparison, there might be a potential cost savings when it comes to that. And
I'm just commenting on the distribution here,
Okay.
just the numerical distribution, and that we chose to set it ahead of that distribution.
I will say, I will throw myself under the bus a little bit, right? I mean, I brought the motion forward at budget time, and I have been in conversation with Dr. Churoshek and with Ms. Sherburne about this topic. I think that there are times when it's fine to be you're a science guy. On the big O, on the order of, right? We're in the ballpark. We're on the order of what other communities are paying, and there's times when it's necessary to be the front of the pack. And what I believe strongly is that what's best for children across our district is for us to fill every sub spot when we have it. And our fill rate is nowhere near 100%. And so although I respect tremendously Mr. Manzo's question and the challenge of, if we have 100% fill rate at this new value, will that put us in a little bit of a pickle? I am confident that Ms. Sherburne tells me we'll be able to manage. We'll probably have some more budget transfers in front of us next year to make it happen, but that would be a good problem to have, because the alternative is, when we have unfilled spots, a para gets pulled, now somebody else has to make up the time that para was supposed to be doing services with some child, and like kind of the ripple effect, it becomes a quality of quote unquote life for the people in the building who are suffering with less than full staff. And so that's kind of a trade-off that we can't necessarily measure. And you say, all right, so we're talking about a difference of $10 per day per sub. That you can absolutely measure. We can make that number. However, you can't measure what is the quality of how stressed out are you today in your building because we had an unfilled sub spot. So that's my rationale. Yes, Mr. Manzo.
So just quickly, when was the last time we raised it? So you said it went from 80 to 110. How long ago was that? Do you remember?
2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
It's been long enough, right?
It was 3.
Yeah.
I'm
You
not
were on the
debating-
committee.
I'm not-
You were on the committee
Yeah, I
then,
was on the
weren't you?
committee,
So
yeah.
it has to be within the last 3 years, right?
Yeah.
You've only served 3 years, so 3 years ago.
So and I wouldn't be surprised if in 3 years we'll be catching up to all these other districts that will also raise their rates, because that's the whole supply-demand thing, right? So, this is a great idea. No problem with this. I just wanted, my questions to Jean over the last 13 years have always been, where's the money coming from, Jean?
How are we going to pay for it?
How are we going to pay for it?
I'm not,
So,
so I'm not I'm in favor of the raise, I'm just cautious of the rate. You know, how fast you increase that. And I just think we should be careful, and it would also be nice to know what the overall cost would be. If you go from the 110 where we are to the 135, roughly what that increase would be.
So I can answer that. I think
Yep.
it's going to be in the range, if we have 100% fill rate.
Yes.
Which, again.
That's what you're going
we don't, that's what we're going for. I think that our maximum exposure is in the $40,000 to $45,000 range. That's at least based upon how many spaces we have. But again, that's maximum
That's a
fill rate.
reasonable number.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, when you look at it like that, thank you. That's a fantastic question, and thank you for that answer, because when we look at it like that and we go, what's our overall budget? It's pennies, right? It's relatively speaking, quote unquote, short money. And I know I've been reprimanded for saying that before, but in a $66 million budget, the fact that we're talking about $40,000 to $45,000 for something that's so incredibly important to what's best for children and what's best for our staff to not be totally stressed out with unfilled rooms, it's pennies on the dollar.
Yeah, I mean, what's going to happen is next year or the year after, these neighboring cities are going to move their numbers, and they may jump. If they jump as large as we're going to be playing that or dealing with that. So
It's like a little leapfrog.
it's leapfrog. It's how far you leap and how far should you leap, and yeah, that's all.
I wish to say I 100% agree. I recognize that. Still, if I get 1 year of I'm the top dog and I have 100% fill rate, that's one better year for the students of this school district. All right, are we ready to vote? There's a motion on the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes 6-0. Because we are so far over time, I'm going to ask you simply, are you concerned about any of the revenues or any of the expense lines in your two reports?
No.
I love that answer. I'm going to ask Ms. Abel, I apologize, we're starting your meeting late, and I don't see the mayor yet, so can we have a few more, can we recess before we start your meeting? All right, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn FNF.
Motion.
Thank you, Dr. Silva.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. All those in favor? Any opposed? And now we are officially adjourned, and I see you, Ms. Flowers. Did you want to say something?
I did not.
You didn't want to say goodbye to Jean?
Oh, well, sure. Of course, I do want to say goodbye to Jean. Jean, thank you for everything. I mean, I'm here representing, I'm one city councilor, but I think it's fair to say, on behalf of my colleagues on the council, we appreciate all the reports you've done, the way you've kept us informed on the council side of things. You make it easy to understand what's happening in the schools, which, as we can see, it's not intuitive finance on the school side unless you know what you're doing, and you've known what you're doing, and we will definitely miss you, but happy retirement.
Thank you.
All right, and so if we're not going to start the next meeting right away, I have cupcakes. And so members of the public who are helping us and volunteering, if you'd like to stay and get a cupcake, please do.
If you can get us on air. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for your patience. Our facility and finance was wrapping up some of the end of year transfers and taking care of some business that we will see on our own agenda tonight. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. This is the Beverly School Committee of the Whole meeting. Today is Wednesday, June 26th, 2024. We are using a hybrid remote model this evening, using a remote meeting application to allow for remote participants and to make sure that the public has access to the open portions of our meeting. As always, we are thankful to BevCam, who is streaming and broadcasting our meeting tonight. We can be found on Channel 6 and High Definition Channel 1073, as well as the YouTube streaming. We thank you, BevCam. Beginning on June 16th of 2021, with the chapters 20 of Acts of 2021, which were twice extended and now further extended until March 31st, 2025, local governments and boards were granted a provision to, among other things, hold meetings remotely by suspending the need for the quorum and chair to physically be present. It asks that our body use technological methods to allow for safe public access. As a note, Beverly also has prior approval from the Attorney General's office for remote participation of its members, although when this act expires, that permission requires the chair and quorum to physically be present. Tonight is a committee of the whole meeting, which means that members of the public do not have an opportunity to address the body. Our next regular scheduled school committee meeting on which there will be an agenda item is September 11th, 2024. If you would like to make public comments, please send your thoughts to residentvoice@beverlyschools.org to request a remote link to join us remotely, or join us here in person where we will have a sign-up sheet. We do ask that the remarks are limited to 3 minutes. They can be related to an agenda item or not related to an agenda item. We do ask that participants provide their name and address for our records, and that it is an opportunity to address the body. We will not necessarily reply or engage in a conversation. Joining us today are members of the school committee and various members of the district administration and leadership teams. I will call the roll in just a moment to make sure that we can see all of the participants, including those who are joining us on the remote platform. I would offer a reminder to people on the remote platform that any audio or video that you supply will become part of our meeting record, and therefore we do ask that you use the mute functionality to prevent background noises. Now let me conduct the roll. Present this evening in person, we have Mayor Cahill.
Here.
Ms. Kimberly Coelho.
Here.
Dr. Kenneth Mackenzie DeFrancis sends her regrets she will not be joining us. In person, Ms. Karen Robinson.
Here.
And Dr. Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Ms. Lorinda Visnick.
Here.
And I'm Rachel Abel, the last I checked. In person, we have Dr. Dorothy Flaherty, our Assistant Superintendent.
Here.
And Dr. Sucharocek, our Superintendent.
Here.
We are joined for the last time by our Business and Operations Director, Jean Sherburne.
Here.
We are joined by our incoming Finance Director, who has survived a few days already in the district, Emma Puglisi.
Here.
Thank you. And Aaron Brown.
Here.
Bethany Splansky.
Here.
And Dr. Andre Morgan, our Director of Opportunity, Access, and Equity.
Here.
Okay. Mark Thomas, our principal from the high school, is joining us in person. And online, we're joined by our principal of the middle school, Lisa Oliver.
Here.
Great. And our Director of Food Services, Christina Leal.
Here.
Great. Did I miss anyone? Okay. Our agenda this evening is a little bit short. I will just mention we will be going into executive session at the end of the evening and not returning to open session. We have first our Pledge of Allegiance, and I know, Ms. Sherburne, I've put you on the spot before, but one more time, for old time's sake, could you please lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Okay, if I could ask the committee for a motion to approve our meeting record from the, let's see, 22nd of May, from our last committee. of the whole.
moved.
Thank you, Ms. Bisnick.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Were there any edits or corrections that you'd like us to note? I'm not seeing any, and we are all in person, so all those in favor of approving the meeting records. We are 6-0, thank you. Next, Dr. Trocek, if you wouldn't mind, I know you have a couple of items on your superintendent report.
Have just a few items tonight. First, Microphone, please. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Yes, good evening. I have just a few items tonight. Dr. Flaherty is here. She is going to walk us through the student-parent handbook updates, and I'll let her take it away from here.
All right, I am presenting. However, we do have Mr. Thomas, the high school principal, Miss Oliver, and Miss Christina Leal online, should you have any additional questions. These are relatively minor changes, a lot of verbal changes, just word changes, and also just to put into the handbook at the middle school and the high school 2 activities that they piloted this year around iPad use and the cell phones. And now it worked well. It is going to continue, and we need to put it into the handbook moving forward. So at the first slide is food service, and this is going to be at the district level. So all of this we want to make sure is consistent across all 3 school levels. Currently, right now, the Magic Meal Plan is in 2 of them, but not in the 3rd. So this is going to make sure that we are consistent across all 3 levels. So the changes that we're looking for you to support are in all handbooks, deleting the reference to free and reduced meals and application for free and reduced meals. We no longer need that because we have universal meals in Massachusetts. We need to update the years to 2024, 2025. This will be new language, that all the handbooks will contain language that will say cash is accepted at all registers, but all change will be deposited to the student's account. There will be no change given back to the student. They may bring cash in, but the change will not be handled and given back to them. It will go on their account. And in the section that is around the Meal Magic point of sale system, this just talks about taking away language that if a student has a negative balance, that they'll receive a cheese sandwich. That's not true now. It was at one time, but because we have universal meals, all students receive 1 free breakfast and 1 free lunch. If they do not have a balance, they won't be able to purchase a la carte items or an additional lunch, but they will always be given a healthy meal at breakfast and lunchtime. And all 3 handbooks will include language that states that the our food service department complies with all federal and state regulations and also complies with the Healthy School Meals initiatives. And that is the changes. Christina, if I missed anything, you can jump in, but I think I hit all the highlights. For the middle school.
May I ask a question while we're on the food part?
Sure.
There was a policy that we reviewed about having a complaint process, specifically to meals. Ms. Leal, do you remember when we reviewed that policy with you?
Yep, that was a civil rights complaint policy.
Yes.
That we do. Yep, we have that.
Do we think that needs to be in this handbook anywhere? Or some mention of if you have a complaint, you can file a complaint as long as we're making changes to the food section of our handbooks? Just a thought.
That's.
Oh, no.
I drove her away.
We can back to that if she gets back on.
All right,
Well,
well,
what we can do is look at that because we
Hello?
will,
There she is, she's back.
Christina, are you there? We can bring that.
Can she not hear us, I wonder?
Every time I go to talk, she talks. We do
Can you
need,
hear me?
we can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you now. That was weird. I don't know if it froze on my end.
Okay.
Um,
Do you have a thought about
I-
including that section about a complaint in the
So we
handbook?
do have it posted on our website for parents. I don't know if you want to put the policy in the handbook as well. Are other ones in there? I'm fine. I sent them all to Donna and we have them all that we can put here.
I don't think I want the whole policy. I was just thinking maybe some mention of there is a complaint. You know, if you have a complaint, we have a process. I don't know.
I'm a little concerned that people might complain about the food instead of the civil rights portion
I-
of that, if it was just,
I think that is a fair statement.
and so I think probably just leaving it on the website might
Okay.
suffice at this point in time. I'd just be
Thank you.
afraid what it would generate.
And I think back when we were giving cheese sandwiches, that might have been a bigger issue. But now that we're giving a free breakfast and lunch, then there is an equity issue, there's an equity piece there that takes kind of away that problem for complaints. We will be bringing, though, in September, we need to bring you some Title IX updates that will need to be added into the handbooks. However, they don't take effect until August 1st, and so our attorney said we can't approve them. We have to wait until after August 1st to add them in. Mayor Kale?
Sorry, Mayor Cahill.
Just quickly, every other bullet makes sense to me. I get that they're substantive, but the changing of the dates, we don't do this every year, correct?
Yes, you do.
We do. We vote on the
Handbooks every
handbook
year.
Every year. Wow. Memory.
Well,
Slippage.
Maybe
I
you're
think,
pushing it back.
I think though, we do this more detailed presentation at CISL, and then the CISL comes and makes a recommendation to you. We ran out of time at the last CISL meeting, and so we just moved the whole thing here instead of doing it first to CISL with a recommendation to the whole committee. This is more detailed than we usually do.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I was just going to say, I don't feel the need to vote on changing the date to make it accurate year to year to year.
Yeah, well, you do, but you just don't hear that that's what you're voting for.
It seems, other things are substantive. Let's just kind of not have the wrong year on our document, but okay.
You'll see that handbook changes is underlined, so if you were all sent the detail, but it's also linked in these slides so that the public can see it, and if you have any questions, you can refer back to that easily. The handbook changes for the middle school is to include their new procedures and consequences around iPads. And this was an initiative that they undertook to teach students about digital citizenship, to make sure that they understand that the iPads are school property. It's not their own personal device. And that they teach them how they should be, where they should be going, how it should be being used. There is a progressive discipline consequence section that is attached. And both the parents and the students will sign a BMS acceptable use policy. And students will be given training in digital citizenship before they are given the iPads. The high school changes look like there are more, but really these are a lot of just word changes. But before we start the high school, I do want to make one note and thank Lacey Turner for the work that she did. Several of you may have received an email prior to the last meeting for her internship. She looked at some handbook changes that she thought should take place, and they were really in the realm of dress code and for some of the terminology that we use when we're referring to special education students. As it turned out, we had to do a deeper dive because the things that she was recommending were right on. They should have been changed, but they were last year when we were doing our review for the TFM. And in doing some research, we did find one link on the high school site that was still linked to the old handbook. So she was working from a previous handbook and identified stuff that we had already corrected. But it was really good research on her part, and we thank her because it helped us to find the link that was not appropriately linked and is now. The sections that Mr. Thomas would like to update, he wants to change the welcome message so that it's from Mr. Thomas and not Mrs. Taylor. Under section 1, academics, academic integrity, you'll see the bolded word. He just wants to including AI. Now that this is in all of our worlds, they want to make sure that students know that if they are using AI, they need to appropriately cite the work that they're using it for. Under academic integrity consequences, we want to add a bullet that says that if you are found using plagiarism, that you'll get a 0 for the assignment and subject to disciplinary action, up to and including suspension. Currently, the punishment says 3 to 5 days suspension. And as you know, we're trying to find better and alternative routes before jumping right into suspension. Under learning expectations, in the first paragraph, we want to change the website. It has the wrong website address in the handbook, so this is just updating it to the current website address. Under report cards, in the first paragraph, we're going to change the language from Moodle to Google Classroom, which is the platform that we are now using district-wide. And under conference extra help, we want to add the phrase in that students can also access academic support during advisory flex periods by scheduling time with a specific teacher. Under student responsibilities and assemblies, we want to update our language and remove the terms ladies and gentlemen and just add in the term act respectfully. The next section is on the cell phones. This mirrors what we piloted and are doing and will continue to do moving forward, that all students are expected to put their phones in the locker for the entire 84-minute or 40-minute block, whichever the instructional time is that they're in. The cell phones need to be turned off. Students who do meet the policy will have the privilege of using the cell phones in between classes and at lunch, non-instructional times. However, if students refuse to do it or they're not following the policy, then they may lose that privilege and also be subject to disciplinary action.
It looks like we have a question from Dr. Silva.
I'm curious about the cell phone program and how, because this year was the first year that it was implemented.
It was.
Is that correct?
It was.
Mr. Thomas, would you mind just sort of,
You can talk in more detail, but I can tell you from walking
Just-
through classrooms, it was a wonderful success.
Yeah.
And there was a different tenor. There was less stress in the classroom. Students were more focused. And everything I saw about it was very positive.
Yeah, overwhelmingly, when we surveyed staff, I think it was over 90% came back as in favor of the policy the way it stood this year. And with anecdotal feedback from students, I won't out any students themselves, but some actually said it was easier to operate throughout the day without their cell phone on them. And so we saw it as a plus overall. The tenor in the classroom was very different, as Dr. Flaherty said. We went from that being probably the number one kind of point of friction between students and teachers to even on any capacity, when you entered a classroom, you weren't seeing the phones like you were prior. So overall, we thought it was a successful pilot.
And I was really impressed. Now, some of them may have kept them in their backpacks and you didn't see them, but when you watched a class and kids came in, even if they were late, they just stopped right away, put it in, and then went to their seat.
That's great. Thank you.
Under family and support, there is an growing list and changes, and so what we'd like to do is to, under extracurricular activities, remove the list that is printed in the document and put in a live link so that it's always up to date as to what the extracurricular activities are that are available for students. We also need to update the Bell schedule to include the new advisory schedule. As always, every year, we need to update the telephone directory as necessary for new staff and changing staff or changing rooms, and update the school calendar for the new year. And those are all of our changes that we're proposing. And we do need a motion to support or accept the proposed changes.
Mayor Cahill and Ms. Bisnick? Are there any additional questions? Karen Robinson.
I just want, again, I wanted to thank Mr. Thomas for the cell phone policy. I think that was a really great, smart move on Beverly High School's part. But I just wanted to, the plagiarism with AI, just because that is it's a pretty big statement to say, like, I feel like we need to make sure that students and teachers know how to make sure that people are using AI properly in the classroom. And it says to, I believe it's making sure you
Sources.
I should have my
Yeah.
glasses
Cited.
on.
You need to
But
cite it.
with
Cite
citing,
your
but
source.
I mean, I'll be the first to admit I'm still learning how to cite with artificial intelligence. So I don't think people are really aware of how to do it.
And
Yeah.
we have, on our admin retreat, we are having a presentation on AI from an expert that's coming in, and to give them kind of an overview of what we will do, which will be presented to the entire staff on Election Day.
Yeah.
And he'll be hitting on some of these topics.
Yeah, and I think it's important to not look at AI as it's not, you can't use it at all. It's not, it shouldn't be punitive. It should be something that we embrace
Teach them how to use
and
properly.
all work with
Yeah.
in the right way.
And that's was our vein when we brought in the speaker that we're having.
I think the reason why we wanted to specifically point it out here is to really work with students about using it responsibly, because I think at this point, there's still a big gray area as to where does it fall into all this. And so to let students know that if you're not given the proper credit or using it the proper way, it could be viewed as plagiarism. But each teacher also has their, the way they lay it out for each assignment as well.
Dr. Silva?
So would you say that all students understand what that means?
No.
Okay, so I think, because I've experienced situations where students have used it and didn't think it was plagiarism, but were suspended as a result of it with no questions.
I don't think we suspended a single
Not-
student based on AI.
Not this year, not this year. So I bring this up because I think it's important to, you talked about signing of documentation for the iPads, some process where kids are educated in terms of what that means and to have them own it or sign something to commit to not plagiarize, or that they understand it, and if they don't, then to at least have the support to let them know what's
Yes.
jumping to suspension, especially with this, could be.
A simple way we kind of work it with the students is kind of a red light, yellow light, green light, as far as, simple example, red light would be no use of AI on this particular assignment for X, Y, and Z reasons.
Okay.
Yellow light might be, you can use it for some research, but it's got to be your own word. Green light, go ahead and use it as much as you need to integrate into the. So there's different ways we as a school are working through that, and it's ever changing, just like the world with AI is. But that's kind of the simple, Cliff's Notes version of how we've kind of addressed it to start.
And there's a whole continuum of what AI is, right? Like you can put it in and have them write the whole paper, or you could be using it as grammar and spelling check, and suggestions as you're typing, so.
It's good.
Madam President. I think it is useful right here to point out that there are some number of courses, I don't know what they are, where we are teaching children how to validate their sources, right? And I think that there is a wonderful opportunity to, it's easy enough to find horribly written things because the AI is, the generated text is only as good as the sources that it can find. And so there's a fantastic, we heard somebody speak at the MASC conference this past year.
That's who's coming to talk.
That's who's coming to talk. He's fantastic.
Yeah.
And they gave out his book at the conference. And so, right, he uses this example about MIT and that, all the freshmen think that there's an event happening and it's really like urban legend. That event, it has never happened, but AI writes this story and says, well, if you're a freshman, you need to make sure you sign up and go do this thing. And in fact, all these freshmen believe it and are looking for that event. And so this idea behind, okay, here's a great example. It's a very well-written piece, and it's very believable. But how do we teach children to vet what they're reading, and is it, is it authentic? Is it reasonable? Right? Where are your sources? Is it accurate? And there are some places where we're doing that, and maybe there's opportunity for us to do more of that as AI creeps in or finds its way in to more places. So I just
No
point
question.
that out.
Creating responsible learners using it, that's our goal.
I want to come when he.
Come, it's election day.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the handbook changes. Again, this was brought to us directly from Sissel since we had run out of time. Are there
Yeah.
any more questions? All those in favor? Okay, that's 6-0. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dot.
Thank you.
And I have just one last item. Earlier in the evening, we had an F&F meeting, and I don't know, Ms. Visnick, if you wanted to make a recommendation based upon the meeting. I have it up there for you, so you don't have to.
Oh, that's my motion?
Well, I'd like to make a motion.
Yeah, all right.
too.
So I'd like to make
I can help you with that.
I'd like to make a motion. F&F recommends raising the substitute pay rate, currently $110 per day to $135 per day, starting in FY '25.
So moved.
Second.
And I don't know if there are any other questions. I know we had a long conversation and talked this through at F&F. And so, that's.
I think as an observer to that meeting, since I was just here to run the computer.
Providing wonderful technical support.
I wasn't able to speak up, but I think that this is a good number. It will be an excellent problem to have if we have full fill rate. I think Ms. Visnick made a lot of very good points about what's best for kids and what's best for educators is to have caring adults in the building and not be short-staffed. And if we have the ability to attract and retain over the summer a pool of candidates that want to work in Beverly, I think that this will be wonderful. I appreciate, Dr. Silva, some of your concerns about other districts then leapfrogging us again, but it's been a few years, and I think that we need to consider not only other districts as our competitors, but other opportunities in, other venues, whether it's a coffee shop or something else that has a more flexible, schedule. So I really appreciate the work that FNF did, as well as Ms. Sherburne, to bring forward the recommendation, and I would like to approve it as soon as I look around to see if there's any other questions or comments. Not seeing any, I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of raising the rate to 135? It's unanimous, 6-0. Thank you so much.
And then my last item was an end of year update, and all I will say is hello summer. So let's go summer. I'm all in favor of summer this year.
All those in favor? Aye. The chair doesn't have much to report, except that we, at our last session, approved our fall calendar. I want to remind people to put on that calendar a committee of the whole meeting at 7 PM for August 28th. That will be the first day that our teachers are reporting back to school, so that's 7 PM here. And then our next regularly scheduled curriculum instruction student life is on September 11th at 6:15 PM. That's the new time that we've agreed, so that we don't continually run over. And our regular school committee will be at 7:30. That's an opportunity for members of the public to come to address us. We do have a retreat that I am sure we'll find at least one point in the summer where our calendars align and we can have a topic of discussion. I will again send out a doodle poll or some sort of inquiry to find if we have such a date. But for now, we don't have anything on the books for that. The only other thing that I would mention is that the negotiating team had a session today, and we will have another session on August 27th with our Beverly Teachers Associations Unit A and C. So that's our calendar. As chair, I would now like to move that we meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purposes 7 and 3, and not to return to open session. Purpose 7 will be to review and approve our minutes from the executive session meeting of June 12th. I printed the earlier version, and I just realized it had been corrected. And purpose 3 is to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with our BTA and AFSCME units, because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the committee. This requires us to have a roll call vote.
Second.
Thank you. And it also requires a second, so thank you, Ms. Visnick. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Visnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel, yes. I tally 6-0. The time is now 8:35 PM. I thank BevCam as always, and I thank those of you who joined us from home. We will see you later. Have a good